Today, in episode 8 of Fully Vetted, we chat with Steve Kalm about his fully restored 1954 C1 Corvette. Steve is as humble and authentic as they come, and we were honored that he reached out to us to do an interview. He just happens to have what is known as an Evolution Collection of Corvettes, which includes an example from every generation of the iconic Corvette family. Stay tuned while he takes us on a journey down memory lane as we showcase each of his cars in this 8-part series. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fully Vetted. Today, we're speaking with Steve Kalm about his Corvette collection, otherwise known as the Corvette Evolution. And this is the first in a series of 8 videos that we're going to do with Steve. And today, we're going to talk about his beautiful C1 Corvette that you see sitting here. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. Thanks for inviting us into your home, into your garage, your Corvette home, I guess is what we could call it. So, if you would go ahead and tell me a little bit about what your obsession is with Corvettes and what led you to get a collection of them to the extent that you have, and then we can go into what it is that we have sitting next to us right here.
Sure. So I've always wanted a Corvette. My dad always wanted a Corvette. My dad got me into it. He started with a little model that was up on his shelf that we talked about, and it was of the C2. So I always wanted to get one. And I told myself if I ever saved half the money, I would get one. So I finally did. And my first one I bought was a 2006 Z06 Daytona Sunset Orange car. And I found it on the web, and I flew back east and looked at it and took it to a dealership and all that stuff. Anyway, but that was my first car, my first Corvette. And it was a great car. And then a few years after that, I sold that one, and I bought a black C6, 2006 Z06. And I took it to Lingenfelter and had the 700 horsepower upgrade put on it. And that really lit the fire after that, because now that car was incredible. So, and then I saw a picture on the social media of a guy that had one of every dish, 1 through 6. And I thought, that's the coolest thing ever. So that's kind of what started. I said, I got to do that. So it took a little over 20 years, buying and selling, trading cars and stuff to get them all. But here they are.
Awesome, and beautiful sight they are. Beautiful, so they are. So in what order was the purchase of this car in that experience?
Number 5.
And tell me about the whole experience of looking for the car, finding the right car that you felt was the one to restore, and then that whole process of going through the restoration.
Sure. So I'm in the local chapter of the National Corvette Restorer Society here in Utah. And people in our club, of course, have all kinds of project cars. And this car was somebody's project car that they had along with some other project cars that he was doing. And we talked many times about the old cars, and I was really looking for a newer one, one that like a 65, 66, one of those, or not quite that far. Hang on. C1 in the like a 60. Because of my birthday, right? I wanted the year of my birthday. It's where I started to look for the C1. But then a guy in my club, Mark, he said, well, I've got this 54 that needs to be restored, and I will let you be the apprentice, and you and I will build the car. And we settled on a price before the restoration started, and that's what we did. So every Saturday for 3 years, I drove up to Layton where he lives, and we worked on this car in his garage until it was, good enough to take to. I took it to Arizona for the upholstery and all that stuff. But we did frame off every nut and bolt off of this car and cleaned it. I mean, I wire wheeled every single thing myself. I was the wire wheel guy, so I cleaned everything, and it had been multiple colors. And Mark's a fanatic for originality, so there couldn't be any red left on this car, even back underneath where the gas tank was. Some had spilled. I had to get in there and get all of that off with turpentine and stuff, and so it's now the same color that it was, pennant blue from the factory, and here it is. The restoration project was I'd never done something to that extent. So we started this. He had already started a little bit of it. The front clip was just horrendous, and the pictures that you'll see later I'll send to you of what it was when it started. It wasn't worth saving. There's a guy I think it's in Oregon, that actually has the original mold that they used, and so he made us another. So it's original part out of the original mold that that is on this car. So Mark had that glued on before I started on that part.
The mastermind of the Corvette's fiberglass body was a man named Robert Morrison, who was the CEO of a company called Molded Fiberglass. Molded Fiberglass has continuously produced fiberglass composite parts for the Corvette since 1954. In 2003, Robert Morrison was posthumously inducted into the prestigious Corvette Hall of Fame.
We hadn't separated the body from the frame yet at that point, so it was still just old, but so it's all new fiberglass in the front from the firewall forward. The hood's original to the car. The doors are off of other 54s because they were pretty hammered. But the trunk and everything in the back is original to the car. So it was just a long, slow process of taking it all apart, cleaning it, make sure it still functioned. If it didn't, fix it. You know, we did have a guy rebuild the motor for us, an engine guy, because we're not really engine guys. But we did pull the engine and the transmission out. I've got pictures of that. And then we took the frame down and had it painted and sandblasted and painted. So everything is clean as a whistle under there, and it's just like a brand new car.
It's like it is. It's like a brand new car. I can attest to that. Do you know what number this was production-wise for 1954?
I think it's two. I have to look at it again. It's 289, I think. It's pretty early.
Out of how many?
4,000.
4,000. So they went from 353 to 4,054. Okay.
It made in April of 54.
Nice.
So it can't be that long. It's higher than that. I can't remember all the numbers. Anyway.
So yeah, and so the interior you had redone too. You said they had that done.
Yeah, we took it to Arizona. There's a guy there that is the foremost C1, C2 expert in the interiors, and he's very good. And NCRS has blessed him as the godfather of these interiors. So we took it down to him, and he did it. And did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. It really
when the top's up on it, it's just really cool, to see.
So, any idea what the total restoration cost was on this car, if you're willing to share that?
Kind of hard to, I don't really know all those numbers because Mark bought all the parts.
Oh, okay.
Right? And we had agreed on a price.
Gotcha.
And he bought all the parts. But I would guess probably, if you don't include labor, because we did it all ourselves, I would guess you'd be in it $60,000, $70,000.
Amazing. But it's the labor that you put into this that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, there's a lot of my blood in there. We got many cuts. Fiberglass rips you up a bit.
It's a pretty amazing car. So tell me some of the differences on the trim in the 53 and 54. The little front, is that different from the 53 to 54?
No, it's the same.
No, the difference was they put a V in the Chevrolet for the V8,
for the V8,
correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you're correct. Yep, they did do that.
So give me some of the styling details about this car, especially these rocket fins back here. Were they like that on the 53 as well too?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the time of the rocket race, right? Everybody in the 60s.
Right.
It lasts, 50s and 60s. So big fins were big on all the cars, and Corvette had those. And they're actually a separate piece, right? And because after 55, they took them off, and then they put the taillights in that actual curve, right, and stuff. But it's a separate piece, and they go on, and then you put the fiberglass around them and just fit them in so that they match everything else in. But because they were missing on the car.
Oh, were they? Okay.
We had them, but they weren't connected, right? So we had to put them on. And anyway, but
what would have caused the original owner to take them off?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Interesting.
They're pretty delicate. If you hit it real hard with a hammer, it'd probably come off. So
I can imagine.
They could have, sitting in a barn or wherever. According to the story where this car came from, it had been in someone's carport for a long time and out in the field for a while, and then it ended up in a police auction, and the guy in our club, Corey, he bought this one and 3 or 4 other ones, all 54s, and they're all in our club. And it's weird to have that many all together, but we have quite a few 54s in our club, considering how old they are.
Nice. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about the tires. The white walls were original, obviously, on the car, but these aren't the original tires.
No, they're not. These are from Coker. Coker specializes in making the replicas of these tires because they don't want people driving on 60-year-old tires. So these are bias ply, just as they were. They look like what they were. They're Firestone tires, and they've got permission from Firestone to remake these and that kind of stuff. So you can go and get them for pretty much any project you have, and that's how we got these. And then we repainted all those little red lines on the hubcaps, and we had to tape that whole thing off. Mark was it was a week project, sitting home at night watching television and taping everything up so we could spray paint the red inside there. So that was quite a job.
Pardon my ignorance, but are these tubeless or tubed tires?
These ones are tubeless, I believe.
Okay. When did they actually go to tubeless? Do you know? Do you have any idea?
I don't know.
I don't either. We'll have to do some research on
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I mean, because I saw it at an old magazine with an advertisement for tubeless tires. It was a big deal.
I remember those.
Yeah, it was a big deal. That's awesome. What is the rating on the NCRS rating for this car?
It's right up here on the wall in my garage, but it was a 98.6, I believe, out of 100 total points. We had a little problem with my radio working. The antenna, notice there's no antenna on the car. It's actually in the trunk lid. It's built in between the two pieces of fiberglass of the frame and the outer molding of the outer skirt is a little wire, and it doesn't ground very well.
Gotcha.
So it works. The radio turns on, and it has seek, and it will seek back and forth and try to find something, but it just can't because the antenna's not grounded properly. So anyway, I'll fix that one these days.
So at 98.6, you said, right? What's the highest that's
100. Well, 100, perfect.
But what's the highest that's ever been actually? Has there been a 100?
I don't know. Probably not, but I know there was a couple of that I've seen that are like 99.8, 99.7s, And there's also stuff about, there's restoration and then there's original cars. They have a different thing called the Duntov Award, and that's all about originality, right? And a lot of stories about that, but it's pretty cool. It's neat to do the NCRS stuff because the judging is a manual like this thick, and you go page by page and they show you every picture. This is what it should look like. This bolt should have an R on it. This one should have an S on it. And if the S bolt is in the front and not in the back where it's supposed to be, you deduct points. And they really want it the way it was delivered not from the factory, but from the dealership is what it is. And that's what they judge.
Pretty amazing experience to go through.
It is. We did it right here in this garage.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So we put on the lift and look underneath it and do all this stuff. So.
How many miles does it have on it?
Since the restoration, about 250 probably.
How many did it have on it when you got it?
I don't know.
No idea.
I mean, it was rolled over.
Right.
So 100,000 plus.
Wow. The engine and the transmission are original in this car. Yeah. And as far as the judging is concerned, do they call that numbers matching, or what is the process they go through?
In this, there's really not it would have to just be the date code on the car. It has to be built before the build date of the car, because if it was built after, then it'd been replaced. So it has to just been built before the car was built, and you have the date of the car when it was built stamped onto the frame.
Right. How often do you drive this car?
Maybe 3 or 4 times a summer.
What are the special events?
A car show, or if we sometimes just to breakfast somewhere. Usually a car show.
I'm sure it gets lots of attention.
It does. It does. People don't even know what it is.
That's what I was going to ask.
Because it doesn't look like, with the cones not in the side, they don't believe it's a Corvette, but it is.
Okay. Anything else you want to add about the car?
For those that don't know, you can't lock the car. It doesn't have, door locks, and it doesn't have roll-up windows. So the windows are actually plexiglass frames. So that the windows are plexiglass, and they're in chrome frames that are in the back of the trunk. And they sit in a little bag that's up against the wall. And so you have to actually put them in there and lock them in. And then when you do that, there's no door handles here either for opening the door. So you have to reach in through the fly window and open the door when the top's up and the windows are in. So it's kind of interesting. I'm sure they got tired of that pretty quickly, and they're pretty hard to find too, to replace those. We took 3 or 4 tries to get it right, because we had to take them all apart and put new plexiglass in them, and you have to get the date code on that to match before the car. So all those little details you have to do when you're doing the restorations.
How often do you put the top up?
Just for the winter.
Okay.
So I'll put up the winter, because it folds, the back window can crack if it stays in the cold, crumpled up. So when it's in there, I have a little pillow that keeps it round inside there so that it stays nice.
What does it make you feel like when you drive this car, Steve?
It's a little scary to drive. You know, if you're used to a modern car, you're used to modern brakes, modern steering, independent suspension, and traction control and all that stuff. You know, this car, there's play in the steering wheel. You know, it's a good, inch to inch slide here, and it's tight in here. I mean, I barely fit. The seat does not adjust. It is what it is. So, my belly rubbed on the steering wheel when I drive it, but it's just cool. It's just cool to cruise around with the top off, and it's a 6-volt car for those that don't know. So you can't just jump start it off of a 12-volt system, right? So you got to be careful with that, and finding the battery. That battery with NCRS, you lose points if you don't have the original battery, and you lose points if you don't have a proper General Motors replacement part. So to get the battery, I lost the points on original because, of course, I can't have original battery. There are people that make ones that look original, and if it looks original and you can't prove it otherwise, then you get the full points, but they don't last very long. So I didn't go that route. But I did find an AC Delco 6-volt battery, and with the part number that it's supposed to be. And they now only sell them for tractors because they don't use them for cars anymore. So it's actually a tractor battery that's in there now.
Wow, I've had what kind of research and investigation did that take, right?
It took a lot. I actually called AC Delco, and they have a section of the business that's just antique cars. And so they sent me over there. It's in their catalog. And I want to order this, but I'm not a dealer, so I can't order them. I had to get somebody special order it for me. And it was 3 or 4 weeks of pushing to finally get the battery that I needed for this car. But we finally did.
When it comes to the value of these cars nowadays, what is the overall estimated value of restored 54?
I would say anywhere from $80,000 to $150,000, depending on the car.
They cost how much new?
About $2,500.
Yeah, in 1954 dollars. Yeah, which is today.
Yeah, it was a ton of money back then.
So, is there anything about this car that you want to tell me that's kind of special about it?
Yeah. So when we did that painting of the frame, that number. So there's an on the frame. There's the sequence for the VIN.
Okay.
Right, and that matches the VIN plate that's inside the door. Right. And then there's also a date that the frame was created and made. And so they stencil that on. And there's a stencil that General Motors has. It's this big machine, big round thing. And you clump it, and it makes the lettering. And then you turn the next one. And so you make this stencil, and you use that to paint the number on the frame back. And so this car was an April build car. So it had to be built before the car was done, and my dad's birthday is April 2nd, and this was made on like April 15th or 16th, I forget. And so I used his April 2nd date in 1954. My dad was born earlier than that, but so when I drive the car, he drives with me because his birth date is actually stamped on the frame.
That's awesome. So yeah, your dad gets to enjoy the collection, the Evolution, along with you, even though he's not with us anymore. Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's an amazing part of your collection here, and I look forward to the rest of the interviews with the other cars you've got going on here. This is going to be a fun trip that we took with you today, so thank you for spending this time with us.
You're welcome.